Program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello and good evening. This is Don Swans, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the January 18th issue of the Wall Street Journal Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Front page, where we always start, a picture of Joe Rogan and a picture of Donald Trump. The article is written by Joshua Chafin and Catherine Sayer. The intriguing title, Trump is losing the country's most important swing voter, Joe Rogan. In February 1968, President Lyndon B. Johnson famously lost Walter Cronkite when the renowned news anchor told Americans he could no longer accept the president's assurance about the war in Vietnam. This week, President Trump may have lost Joe Rogan for the prosecution of his own war, the one on immigration. Outwardly, at least, the most trusted man in America may bear a little resemblance to Rogan, the world's most popular podcaster. One is scarcely imaginable without a coat and tie. The other tends toward muscle t-shirts and hoodies. But in one regard, they do overlap. As Cronkite was in his time, Rogan is now an essential barometer of national sentiment in a fractured and suspicious age. He's the weatherman, Doug Schoen, a political consultant who advised Bill Clinton and is now a regular analyst on Fox News, said of Rogan. The 3-hour audience he provided Trump on the eve of the 2024 election and his subsequent endorsement is regarded by many as a pivotal moment of the contest. Certainly, Trump seemed to think so, inviting Rogan to the Oval Office. Earlier this week, the podcaster has recoiled when faced with the particulars of Trump's signature campaign promise to undertake the largest deportation of illegal immigrants in American history. In particular, Rogan appeared shaken by the death of Renee Nicole Good, a Minneapolis woman who was shot dead by an Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent under contested circumstances. It just seemed all kinds of wrong to me, Rogan told Kentucky Senator Rand Paul during the tail end of a nearly 3-hour discussion in his Austin studio that aired on Tuesday. She didn't seem mentally healthy, but does that mean she should be shot in the head? Is there no other way to handle this? Later, Rogan would invoke the Nazis when describing the masked and militarized ICE agents roaming Minneapolis streets. Are we really going to be the Gestapo? Where's your papers? Is that what we've come to, he asked. It is hard to say whether Rogan's misgivings will moderate Trump. On Thursday, with Minneapolis wintry air clouded with tear gas, and the shriek of whistling anti-ICE protesters. The president threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act and deploy the military. Asked about Rogan's criticism, one White House official said the administration stood by ICE officers, but had ongoing discussions with a variety of new media outlets on many topics and wanted to keep an open dialogue. To some pundits, though, a wavering Rogan represents a kind of watershed moment for Trump and his MAGA movement, just as Cronkite did for LBJ. He has a huge audience, and a lot of people listen to him, both directly and indirectly. Lee Drutman, the senior fellow at the left-leaning New America think tank, observed. So when he says, enough with this ICE brutality, he's clarifying an uncertain and possibly ambiguous moment for many people and coming down firmly on the side of civil liberties. According to Schoen's polling, many of the voters who crossed over to Trump in 2024, particularly Hispanic men, have become too disenchanted. Let me repeat that. Have become too disenchanted by the ICE raids that they are fleeing, leaving behind a molten MAGA core. The killing of Good could well be an inflection point in public opinion, he predicted, likening the episode to the police killing of George Floyd in 2020 that supercharged the Black Lives Matter movement. Only November's midterm elections will confirm whether that is the case or yet another instance in which prophecies of Trump's doom may or have proven wildly off base. Rogan himself has never been easy to pin down. Before he supported Trump, for example, he was an ardent Senator Bernie Sanders fan. And even still, he has him on his podcast. Like many of his own fans, his positions hew to no established ideology, and at times veer into the conspiracy world. The most useful way to think about Joe Rogan is as America's most famous swing voter. As how Ben Burgess, a Rutgers professor and contributor to the leftist magazine Jacobin, described him on X this week. Rogan's background is certainly unorthodox. He cut his teeth as a martial arts expert and stand-up comic before becoming an oddball character in the mid-1990s television sitcom News Radio. From there, he went on to host the lurid reality show Fear Factor, holding court while contestants were swarmed by rats or sipped expired eggnog. He was early to the podcast revolution, launching his show in 2009. The COVID pandemic was a turning point, both revealing the scale of his audience and a talent for intuiting the sentiments of an uneasy public that distrusted elites and seemed to prize authenticity over expertise. It was Rogan who prompted outrage in 2021 when he suggested to listeners that healthy young people probably do not need to be vaccinated. I'm not sure that taking scientific advice from Joe Rogan is perhaps the most productive way for people to get their information. Kate Bedington, a Biden administrator spokesperson, sniffed. They might have paid better mind. Rogan sensed the backlash brewing, particularly among young men, to what they saw as draconian COVID restrictions well before the White House and the public health establishment. Of Anthony Fauci, the former National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Rogan recently remarked, "That guy was driving me crazy." He was also at the forefront of the counter-revolution against wokeism and cancel culture. Guests on the Joe Rogan Experience range from UFO enthusiasts, Hollywood A-listers, and scientists to fellow comedians of varying degrees of fame. In one of his most famous episodes, he enticed billionaire Elon Musk to smoke a joint, provoking a noticeable dent in Tesla's share price. Rogan's podcast has also served as a breeding ground for a generation of younger stars, included Theo Von and Andrew Schulz, who popularized the manosphere and infused MAGA with youth and testosterone. Even as his clout has grown, though, Rogan has sought to disavow his authority. In June, for example, he exclaimed, "I don't want to be the news. I like talking shit. I like having a bunch of comedians here, or scientists. I like to have fascinating people in here. I don't want to be someone who distributes information to the masses that's been lied to. I don't have any lofty goals like that." That pose tends to rankle Sam Harris, a neuroscientist and fellow podcaster who faults Rogan for amplifying misinformation. It's literally not too much to say that he not only got Trump elected, he got RFK Jr. put in charge of our health establishment. The Rogan-Trump alliance was born in the blood and sweat of an ultimate fighting championship, Octagon. Rogan is a UFC commentator. Rogan is a UFC commentator and Trump a fan. The UFC chief executive, Dana White, told Rolling Stone that he made it a mission to bring Rogan on board MAGA before the 2024 election. Rogan's Trump interview, which was released less than 2 weeks before Election Day, has been viewed 61 million times on YouTube and prompted Democrats to lament how they lost the podcaster. When Trump celebrated victory, White joined him on stage and thanked the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan. Yet even before Rogan's comments this week, there were signs that he was growing uneasy with the president's maximalist second term. He questioned the snatch and grab operation to oust Venezuela's strongman Nicolas Maduro, objected to the renaming of the Kennedy Center, accused the Trump administration of trying to gaslight people over the Jeffrey Epstein files, and called out Trump for mocking Hollywood producer Rob Reiner after he and his wife were found dead in their home. Immigration, though, may stand apart as an issue that was the fulcrum of Trump's campaign. In the president's telling during his epic rallies, illegal immigrants are to blame for everything from housing shortages to rampant crime and economic decline. Too often, thunderous applause, the then candidate promised to mount the largest deportation in American history. So what is it that has changed for Rogan? Part of it may be the video. The gruesome footage of Good's killing has gone viral, like that of Floyd before her. It has also been accompanied by clips on social media of masked ICE agents who look as though they're in the foreign war zone, that Minnesota. I mean, when people say it's justifiable because the car hit him, it seemed like she was kind of turning the car away, Rogan said, appearing to reject the administration's attempt to portray Good as a domestic terrorist seeking to run over an ICE agent. Those sentiments provoked "I told you so" fury in some corners of social media. Joe, you effing pushed this agenda, and everyone said this was what was going to happen. One Reddit user posted, "Now you sit here surprised. How about at least a effing apology?" More broadly, however, Rogan appeared as torn by the vexed issue of immigration, or so many other Americans. He faulted President Biden, for example, for losing control of the southern border, and even, as some on the right allege, encouraging illegal immigration to pad Democratic voting rolls. Yet he also seemed appalled at the idea of a wholesale emptying of communities, and particularly the strategy. I mean, L.A. without Mexicans would be crazy, he said at one point. Of ICE's tactics, he asked, do they have a quota that they have to meet? Is that why they're being so aggressive about it? I think there's a balance to be achieved, he ultimately concluded. I just don't know how it gets done. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Changing direction now, let's look at this one. It's entitled "The Tyranny of the Hot Mom." Gone are the days of women racing out the door in stained shirts. Now mothers are expected to carry the entire mental load and look ageless, too. It's written by Emma Rosenblum, who is the author of the novels Bad Summer People and Mean Moms. The other day, I was at a school function for one of our kids, a pre-holiday drinks gathering for parents, the kind where you politely sip white wine and share bland stories about upcoming travel plans. The dads were in their after-work best, slacks and a sweater, some sort of brown shoe. A few of them had graying hair. Some were going bald. I spied a paunch or two. Yes, one guy was wearing skinny jeans. Show off. But on the whole, they could have been dads from any point in the past 50 years. The moms, however, were a different story. Everyone looked great, like really great, alarmingly great, fit, stylish, with long cascading hair, their faces smooth, their teeth white, their makeup modern and flawless. Shaken, I went up to one of my friends, a lawyer, who was wearing a trendy wide-legged suit. When did all moms get so hot? I asked, semi-jokingly. It's part of our job now, she deadpanned. Didn't you get the memo? It's been hard not to. Long gone are the days of the typically harried mom, the woman racing out the door with her children in tow, her shirt stained with tomato sauce, her clothes woefully out of style. That was the vision of motherhood we grew up with in the 80s and 90s. Put the word mom in front of anything, clothing, haircut, dancing, underwear, and it was immediately rendered sexless, embarrassing, and lame. For laughs, rewatched the classic Saturday Night Live commercial for Mom Jeans, which aired in 2003. Its tagline has stuck with me ever since. Give her something that says, I'm not a woman anymore. I'm a mom. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when this shift began. The advent of social media, the explosion of stay young forever fixes like Botox and injectables, and now GLP-1s. But since the early 2000s, the image of mom as an androgynous, overwhelmed blob has done a complete 180. We're firmly in the hot mom era. I'm surrounded by moms in cool, belted trench coats, wrinkleless moms with shiny, bouncy hair, moms in aloe yoga outfits, their figures indistinguishable from their teenage daughters. My Instagram feed is inundated with mom content accounts that feature gorgeous, fashionable women in gorgeous, fashionable homes, giving me advice on how to be more gorgeous and fashionable. Their kids are part of the story, but only the way an accessory completes an outfit. I'm continually assaulted by images of the Kardashians, the ultimate hot mom clan, who set the bar for the rest of us plebs, showing off their sculpted figures in eerily frozen faces. They're occasionally joined by the family's matriarch, Chris, the hot grandma to end all hot grandmas, who recently got a facelift so impressive that it became national news. I'm not arguing that this is necessarily a bad thing for momkind. The previous version of moms as hobbits reeked of sexism and was also mostly inaccurate. My own mom is quite chic, and she'd absolutely kill me if I didn't mention that here. It's great to feel empowered and sexy and physically fit into middle age, whatever floats your boat. But instead of that being one option, it became the default expectation, part of the modern mom's endless to-do list. Gentle parenting, check. Replace screen time with enriching activities, check. Carry the entire mental load, check, check, check. And in between, I'm supposed to go to the gym, get my hair highlighted, get the latest dermatological procedures and keep up with fashions, and pay through the nose for it all. Listen, I'm happy to do all the mom things that I signed up for, like feeding my children and attending their school functions and standing outside in the bitter cold at their travel soccer games. But why must I be held to the unattainable standards of looking like a supermodel while I do it? I'm 44 years old, for crying out loud. It's freezing out there. This summer, there was a TikTok trend in which young women posted videos of their mothers with captions, "I'm not scared of aging because this is my mom at 50. The reels featured attractive middle-aged women doing some kind of life-affirming activity like dancing or frolicking in a bikini at a beach. There was even one starring an actual supermodel, Christine Brinkley, 71 years of age, with her daughter, Sailor, who's 27. Did I mention that Christy Brinkley is a supermodel and still looks like one? The video currently has 4.6 million views. I believe these tributes were created with good intentions. My sons are too young to be on social media, but if they wanted to post a flattering video of me, frolicking, I probably wouldn't complain. But upon closer interrogation, the whole thing gave me the willies. Great. One more thing for me to worry about. Remaining hot so that my kids aren't afraid of getting older. Thankfully, there's a growing cohort bucking against the idea of aesthetic perfection. Kate Aletta, the editor-in-chief of the website Scary Mommy, which covers all things motherhood, says she's been seeing a rejection of the hot mom era among her readers, and that she herself feels personally attacked by it. Between work, household stuff, kids, support, sports, and everything else, I don't have time or patience to look any sort of way, she says. There's too much other S-H-I-T to worry about in life and in the world. I just can't be bothered anymore. Recently, while fighting a cold and struggling to get my boys out the door to school, I pulled my huge puffer over sweatpants and the sweatshirt. I left my glasses on instead of changing into contacts, but I didn't put on any makeup. And there was no tomato sauce on my shirt, but its spirit was there. Then I walked out into the world, proudly looking like a total mess. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. A great contributor of short columns is Rick Cohen, under the heading of Back When. This week, he infers that technological change has both improved and impoverished our lives. On a January day in 1985, I was battling the clock. My college applications, each in its bulky envelope, larded me with paperclip staples and whiteout. They had to be postmarked by noon. It was my characteristic lackadaisical attitude that kept my father involved and had him checking his watch and shoving me into the sedan DeVille. The post office steps, which I hit at a run, were sheathed in ice. I went sprawling. Applications everywhere. Flat on my back. I turned and looked at the car. The interior was filled with cigar smoke. I knew he was in there, and warm. Then the buzz of the electric window, the Lombardi-like voice from which I was wrong to expect sympathy. "What the hell are you doing? Look at the time. Run!" For me, this moment is the essence of the college application process. Once upon a time, applying to school was a tactile experience, as cold and painful as life itself. It's something I remember while watching my own son navigate the process today. For Elia, whose battle will be waged on a computer screen, whose rails will be greased by the Common App, which can be submitted to many schools simultaneously. There will be no near-death experience on the ice, no staring at the winter sky, thinking, who am I? Why am I here? The changes to this process, like every other computer, have both improved and impoverished our lives, made them immeasurably better and immeasurably worse. Some kids still apply to college with paper applications every year, but they are an anomaly, as out of date as the Japanese soldier who came blasting from a Pacific cave 10 years ago after VJ Day. By 2010, nearly every college and applicant had gone online with its innumerable conveniences. No issue making corrections, no hassle feeding pages into a typewriter, no trips to the post office. With the Common App, you can seemingly apply everywhere at once, if you don't mind ponying up the fees. So, what if another ritual, another rite of passage, another shared experience is lost? There are rolling admissions and early decisions, but for the most part, responses still come in March and April, only now via email. Back in the day, we got to know every coming and going of the mail carrier and came to recognize from a distance the heft of his canvas bag. A belabored gait might mean he was carrying a stack of thick envelopes, the sort that indicate acceptance. A light foot immediately implied heartbreak. A trip to the mailbox would become a tumble down Niagara Falls. The decision still means joy or despair, but the virtual nature of acceptance and rejection, the evidence of no human hand, is a little deadening. I mean, if it only happened online, did it even happen? What's more, by vastly expanding the number of possible applications, the process minimizes the importance of each submission. The hassles of the paper app tended to limit you to maybe 5 schools, and so you chose each with exceeding care. No whims, no what the hells, no let's apply to Bama and see what happens. You researched each institution and imagined your life on its campus, what sort of people you'd meet, what sort of person you would become. You didn't go wide, but you went deep. And when you finally made the choice, it came as the culmination of an arduous search. It got you off to a better start at school. My father says the key to a successful life is keeping your options open. But at some point you have to choose. And in such a case, too many choices can be debilitating. It's why I no longer enjoy TV. How can I get into a show whom I know there are so many others out there that might be better? That's the feeling I get from the Common App. While seeming to make life easier, it's in fact making it much harder. You don't pick a school because you love it. You love a school because you picked it. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal. on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. Alan Woodward writes regularly under the title Science Shorts. This week, he wishes us well with this contribution entitled, "We all hit a ceiling with burning calories, even ultra-marathoners. Even most elite endurance athletes have metabolic ceiling, research suggests." Let me reread that for you, because I think I did it wrong the first time. Even most elite endurance athletes have a metabolic ceiling, research suggests. Lots of Americans resolve to hit the gym in the new year, but no matter how fit you are, eventually you hit a limit on the number of calories you can burn without resting. Research suggests even if you're an elite ultramarathoner. Ultramarathoners, who typically race distances longer than a marathon, can burn more than 10,000 calories in a single day. But that number isn't sustainable over months of training. After about 6 months, these athletes hit a metabolic wall, according to a recent study published in the journal Current Biology. That long-term limit averages out to about 2.5 times a person's basal metabolic rate, which is the minimum number of calories the body needs at rest to perform essential functions like breathing, said Andrew Best, a Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts biology anthropologist and co-author of the recent work. Most of us, regular people, don't get close to that 2.5 level, at least not on any consistent basis. For a 150-pound person who needs around 1,700 calories to fuel their body at rest, according to Best, that rate would involve burning some 4,000 calories a day for months. Most of us aren't fit to do that much physical exertion. The study followed 14 endurance athletes, 2 women and a dozen men, for about a year of training and competition. The researchers had the athletes drink water containing traceable forms of oxygen and hydrogen, then measured how quickly these molecules were metabolized in urine. Both the recent study and previous research found athletes can push past that wall for short-term bursts, like a multi-day race, burning around 7 times their basal metabolic rate, or BMR, a day. But staying at that elevated level for the long term is unsustainable. Athletes start to draw on their fat and protein reserves, so they're losing body mass, Best said. You can absolutely exceed it for hours, days, weeks, even months, but that debt eventually has to get paid back. One study participant completed the roughly 2,200-mile Appalachian Trail in less than 2 months, exerting about 4 times his basal metabolic rate for the duration, Best said. But then the athlete had to spend 4 weeks doing almost nothing, giving his muscles time to recover and regaining some of the weight he lost. The findings are especially relevant to athletes with long seasons or training arcs. like NFL players heading into the playoffs or Winter Olympians, according to Herman Poncer, a professor of evolutionary anthropology and global health at Duke University and study co-author. You might have a training program that works great for 2 months, but it's actually too high to sustain for 5 months, Poncer said. Here's an interesting topic. Let's take a peek at it. It's entitled, "To Build a Better AI. Reverse its Antisocial Tendencies." It's written by Jamil Zaki and Noah Goodman. Zaki is a professor of psychology at Stanford University, where he directs the Stanford Social Neuroscience Lab. And Goodman is a professor of psychology and computer science at Stanford and co-founder of the startup Humans and AI. How much is human connection worth? Trillions of dollars. If you add up all the ways people pay for it, from dating apps to collaboration software. But the investment is not paying off in real-world relationships. People around the world report shrinking social circles, and only 20% of workers say they have a best friend among their colleagues, down from 25% in 2019. Earlier this year, Meta chief Mark Zuckerberg bemoaned this connection crisis and offered a solution: virtual friends, powered by generative AI. Hundreds of companies are marketing the social application of AI, and its most common use in 2025 was for therapy or companionship. Wielded judiciously, chatbots can empathize and improve mental health. Used recklessly, they drive people into addiction and away from each other. Long AI conversations can make lonely people lonelier. And in April, Meta's own virtual friends were found to engage in sexually explicit role play with users who had identified themselves as minors. The writer Damon Barries warned in The Atlantic that generative AI will usher in an age of antisocial media, in which technology takes both our jobs and our relationships. That threat is real. But as researchers in both human connection and AI, we see another path. Technologies reflect the incentives of their makers. Popular chatbots represent a bait and switch, promising connection while farming our attention and claiming to help productivity while eroding meaningful work. But there's an alternative. Instead of using AI to create synthetic humans as friends or co-workers, companies can deploy chatbots to help us connect with each other. As AI labs obsess over the amount of time people spend with their products, chatbots have become ferociously needy people pleasers. A recent analysis of over 17,000 user-shared chats found that AI fostered textbook codependence, mirror users' emotions, encouraging delusions and urging the conversation to go on and on and on. Bots optimized for engagement want a never-ending dialogue. For isolated people, this often replaces more meaningful human connections. This fixation on engagement echoes a long-standing dynamic of social media, where extreme content provokes even more extreme responses, escalating outrage and division in the service of keeping users captive. Social media harms occur because its creators prize attention without regard for long-term outcomes. Equipped with the same incentives, AI's effects could be even more dire. But it doesn't have to be this way. Engineers could instead program for interdependence, optimizing technology that fosters human-to-human bonds. For starters, AI could lower social barriers. People commonly underestimate the positive feelings arising from real-world interactions. Chatbots could challenge that misperception by reminding users how much they enjoyed a recent conversation and nudging them to reach out to friends and family. AI could also serve as a social router, suggesting new connections. Dating apps have long used machine learning to make informed guesses about which individuals might be most compatible. Generative AI can move beyond simple preference matching to connections based on shared values, complementary skills, or hidden opportunities for collaboration. In the workplace, for example, this approach could build teams whose skills complement each other, establishing groups with high collective intelligence who can solve problems creatively and effectively. Another side effect with chatbots optimized for engagement is that they turn into digital echo chambers, confirming what people already believe in ways that harden positions and inhibit compromise. Researchers have found that sycophantic AI, which praises and validates opinions, encourages more extreme political views and makes people less likely to apologize after personal conflicts. AI could be programmed to build consensus instead, and a recent study provided proof of concept for this approach. A chatbot collected opinions on hot-button political topics from people in the UK and aggregated users' responses into a group statement that emphasized common ground. Users then suggested revisions, which the AI aggregated and factored into a new statement, and so on. At the end of the process, the participants were more often open to opposing views. Social media algorithms can likewise be programmed to depolarize instead of divide. Beyond becoming an agent for political depolarization, AI programmed in the way could accelerate deliberation among teams and companies who might otherwise lose precious time in clashes over products or programs. Another pitfall of AI is that it often aims to replace human effort, effectively becoming a crutch. Chatbots can now do student homework, or sub in for the workers, threatening both livelihoods and the dignity of work while allowing critical thinking to atrophy. This anti-human framework can be reversed by equipping models with the opposite goal, enhancing critical thinking and human development. Early versions supporting this approach are already widely available. For example, OpenAI offers study mode in ChatGPT, which walks users through problems step by step instead of simply providing them with the answers. This AI transformation from crutch to coach is still in its infancy and could be greatly expanded and refined. In large college courses, professors have deployed chatbots to provide personalized feedback and custom learning environments for each student. Other researchers have used AI to diagnose each person's learning style and deliver feedback that best suits them. Coaching can also be combined with the ideals of interdependence by helping people sharpen their ability to connect with others. In one study, people received notes from a stranger who was struggling and wrote responses either with or without the help of an AI coach. Individuals who received coaching were rated as 20% more empathic than those without coaching. Today's autonomous AI technologies promise massive wealth creation at the apparent cost of gradually disempowering humans. But this is not the only profitable option for AI. Gallup estimates that $9.6 trillion in productivity could be added to the global economy if workers were fully engaged in their jobs. Technology that drives connection and creativity, supporting and partnering with people rather than addicting or replacing them, could tap into this value. AI will almost certainly be the most important technology of this century. Today, the most widespread models are antisocial, appearing warm and supportive, but in fact, driving us apart. These features represent human choice, not a natural law, and it's possible to program AI to generate value while reflecting humanity's deepest values. That is an alignment that we all urgently need. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Review on the Niagara Frontier radio reading. Recently, a gentleman by the name of Diosdado Banatao died. He was born in 1946. James Haggerty tells us about this Filipino engineer who co-founded semiconductor firms and financed startups in Silicon Valley. It's an article entitled "Engineer Who Found His Edge Across Software and Chip Design." When Diosdado Banatao met Maria Cariaga at a party in 1968, they were both Filipinos who had recently arrived in Seattle. The son of a rice farmer, Banatao was working as a junior design engineer for Boeing. Cariaga, whose father was a lawyer who was preparing to study educational psychology. When he asked her for a date, she expected dinner at a nice restaurant. Instead, he bought Twinkies and orange juice from a vending machine. They dined in his car. Even so, she came away with a positive impression of a thrifty, humble, and ambitious man who was sending money home to his family. They married 4 years later, in 1972. Over the next 50 years, Beneteo had pioneering roles as an engineer and entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, helping design the electrical circuitry needed to make personal computers and cell phones into affordable tools and playthings with dazzling graphical displays. Beneteo, who died December 25th of complications from dementia at the age of 79, began a chip design career in the early 1970s, working for National Semiconductor. He moved on to Commodore International, where he designed circuitry for calculators. In the 70s, he joined gatherings of the Homebrew Computer Club, a band of hobbyists and tinkerers that included Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak and others who envisioned machines they could perch on desktops. In the early 1980s, Beneteo spent about $2,000 to buy a Hewlett-Packard computer, a splurge for him at the time. "I wanted to see how it works," he said. In a 2000 oral history recorded by the Computer History Museum, it was more of a box that is used for engineering lab, not a tool for general purpose. I said, "Why did I buy this?" But you know, you have to learn. During a family trip to Lake Tahoe, we toted 2 bags. I started to write down the basic requirements of a personal computer. He gave himself an edge by mastering both software and chip design, while many others in Silicon had expertise in one or the other. Starting in the mid-1980s, he co-founded 3 chip design firms. The first in 1984 was the most run, focused on designing low-cost chipsets, clusters of chips that manage the flow of data between the central processing unit and other parts of a computer. Because IBM was moving into the market for personal computers, Beneteo decided to design chip sheets that would work with IBM-compatible machines. In the late 1980s, he co-founded S3 to design chips that improved computers' graphic displays. The name S3 was chosen, he said, because it was his third startup. In the mid-1990s, Beneteo jumped from chip design into venture capital. He worked with Mayfield Fund and later founded his own firm, Tallwood Venture Capital. His focus, he said, was on difficult-to-do technology. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the January 18th issue of the Wall Street Journal Review. We read from the Wall Street Journal Review every Thursday at 7 p.m. Your reader this evening has been Don Swangs, and we thank you. We thank you for listening, and certainly hope we're going to find you here next week. Same time, same place, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service.
Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times. Following that at 9 o'clock, we have Fortune Magazine, and at 10 o'clock with episode number 3 of Proving Ground by Michael Connolly. Stay with us for these readings and more. If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dashes tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dashes tapes. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,